AMA, November 17.
Yes, so we are live. So hi, everybody. You've got Jesse and Walter from Energy Web here. We're going to go ahead and notify everybody. Yep, we're going to go ahead and notify everybody. Okay. So how's it going, Walter? You have a halo around your head.
I'm so inspired by all our members. So I thought I'll put it back at the back side of me. Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, it looks cool. It looks cool.
So hi, everybody. Again, Jesse Morris, Chief Commercial Officer of Energy Web, joined here by our illustrious CEO with the halo of Energy Web validators around his head, Walter Koch, for our second live stream AMA.
Hi, guys. Good to meet you all. And I look forward to this AMA again, Jesse. So I say let's start.
Excellent. So just like the last AMA, we had a few questions that came in from Reddit in the community. Now I'm looking over at our YouTube channel. There should be the ability to drop comments and chat in there. Our very own Kobar, the moderator from a Telegram community, will be in the chat box trying to help filter questions and everything else. So same structure. We'll have a bit of a chat here, answer some of those questions, and then we'll flip it over to the community. So the first one, Walter, I think we do have some newcomers to Energy Web, and I'll ask, I think for you, a pretty simple question. But the first question would be, so when a company runs a decentralized application on the Energy Web chain, does it need tokens to operate?
Yes, we still need them. So for a couple of reasons. Simplest way of looking at it is that our blockchain operates in the same way as mainnet Ethereum does. So our token is a native token. It's not an ERC20, it's a native token. So for these apps to operate, they need to pay for gas. And that's why they need a token. That's just a very, very basic part of it. And then, of course, when it comes to how we utilize the token for the applications that run on top of the blockchain in the utility layer or even in the toolkit layer. And that's, of course, where a lot of more use cases are for the Energy Web token. And we got some great articles actually on Medium describing that.
Yeah. So whoever asked that question, and for anyone else that's new to Energy Web, please do check out our Medium posts that really walk through specifically everything Walter just described. But maybe I'll actually take the second question we got to answer it in a slightly different way, just to make it real. So somebody posted a question to Energy Web. Could you walk through a real life example about how a normal household could participate in the energy market and how that process would work? It's actually a great question.
Yeah.
I'll just take myself because I like to be selfish and talk about energy context through my own eyes. So we have an electric vehicle. And so what this could look like, right, is my electric vehicle would be actively digitized and connected to my local utility. So they would actually know that somebody on this part of the grid happens to have an electric vehicle. First of all, that sentence might sound simple to all of us who are using a lot of technology to even pull off this live stream right now. That in and of itself would be a massive transformation for the energy sector to help utilities see exactly where assets exist, like electric vehicles, on their grid. So that's part one. Part two is basically I, as the owner of that electric vehicle, would be able to say, yes, I am willing to have my car charge or not charge at certain times a day in order to receive a discount, for example. Basically, for a user, that's all we're talking about here. We're talking about price signals being sent to assets like electric vehicles or other assets to use or not use electricity at specific times of the day. So from a user perspective, that's really all I would see is that my local utility has a program so that my asset can participate in the energy market. What does that mean? That basically means I'm going to get paid at the end of the day to engage in some kind of behavior. So that, again, from a user perspective, it's pretty simple once our kinds of solutions are deployed and live. Everything behind the scenes is far more complicated in terms of how do you actually make all of that work? How do you settle payments with my electricity bill? So that's a lot of the work that we are doing with R3 currently. How do you make sure my car can talk to the utility? very complicated, right? But at the end of the day, that's the kind of transactional environment we're trying to make it possible. And it's reflected in the tagline that you'll see if you go to the Energy Web website right now. Enable any asset, electric vehicle in my example, owned by any customer to participate in any energy market. That's our focus.
Yeah, well said. and perhaps to add with what the reason why Energy Web Token plays an important role too is that we've created an open, publicly accessible, decentralized infrastructure. So anybody who wants to build any application for that asset to participate in whatever can also just deploy them on our infrastructure. So it's really decentralized, really open source.
Cool. So let's jump down to another question. Basically asking about some different organizations that are looking to join the Energy Web community. The question was, do we think there will be automotive partners running an EWC validator node in the future? But we could both answer this one, Walter, but I'll start. I think potentially yes, definitely. We're in conversation with a number of auto manufacturers and other companies kind of in the electric mobility space in particular. So companies that run charging stations and things like that. I think definitely we could see them becoming validators. My only comment there is that remember the examples Walter and I just talked through. The key organization to look at, in my opinion, in terms of adoption of the Energy Web kind of approach are utilities, are the grid operators. So when you see announcements that different grid operators are embracing what we're doing, that's the key first mover, because then they, working with us typically, deploy a new platform so that those assets can actually integrate with the platform. So again, yes, we really want these automotive partners to come into the Energy Web ecosystem. We want to work with them. We want to onboard their assets. But really, to me, I'm always saying, how can we get these utilities, so the companies that are responsible for running these markets, that's kind of the primary initiator of these kinds of markets that we're working on bringing on board.
Yeah. Only thing I would add, Jesse, to that is that fast forward 10 years, it could be that OEMs that have produced cars over the last 10 years are actually very important players in the energy market, because a battery, of course, in an electrical vehicle, and just whether it's consumer vehicle or just imagine buses or big lorries, the big trucks, they will obviously play a very, very important role in a lot of the energy markets. So I definitely think that they could be major players in the energy market itself. And that's also a reason why it's very logical they start participating in the governance also over time. Yeah, similar to how Apple came into the telecom market. Apple was nothing in 2008, and I used to work at Vodafone then. And I remember a conversation, I was part of it, between my CEO and Steve Jobs. He was still alive. And the telco companies, including Vodafone, they were making jokes about Apple. Come on, you can barely make a profitable laptop. You know, what are you going to do in telecoms? So we know what happened with that. So, and that can also happen, I think, with the car manufacturers in the energy sector. They can really disrupt it.
I think it goes beyond car manufacturers too. If I go beyond this question, remember, we've been fielding a lot of conversations with really big renewable energy buyers. So big corporates with sophisticated demand for renewables. You see headlines with Google, Microsoft, Apple, actually. So a lot of the larger Fortune 100, 500 companies are really sophisticated on how they buy renewables. I could see them becoming validators on the network, or if not validators, really a part of the Energy Web ecosystem, because exactly like you said, these leading buyers of renewables are becoming key market participants. So absolutely. Yeah,
very interesting futures.
So we had, as the American, with the elections having taken place since the last one, it looks like we did get a couple of questions about the elections, about the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC order coming into.
I also heard Trump replaced one at the last moment, no? One of the leaders of FERC. I read it last week, I think.
Yeah, you got it. Well, let's jump in on that. Very interesting. So for newcomers to Energy Web, just to recap, we were very closely following a regulatory order here in the US called Federal Energy Regulatory Commission 2222. Basically, what it says is, hey, utilities or grid operators in the US, come up with a way for every customer in your territory that has a asset, so a distributed energy resource is the energy jargon, make it possible for them to participate in the wholesale energy market, which if you follow Energy Web at all, that's our DNA. That's exactly why we exist. So we were really excited about that order. What's interesting is, like Walter said, one of the commissioners, the director of FERC that basically pushed that order forward was just let go by the Trump administration before the elections were finalized. Interesting, but the order is still there. And again, some of the questions we got from the audience is, when do you think we'll start seeing the effects of the FERC order? Are more American players reaching out to EWF in light of this legislation? Yeah.
I think I would say definitely, Jesse. I know you are in a lot of discussions, but what's good about US versus Europe is that it might take a bit longer in the US, but then if the decision is there, let's go and do, then it's much more a hands-on type culture, and let's go and do. So I think where I would say Europe, or perhaps some parts of Asia, are a little bit more advanced now versus the US. It would really not surprise me, given the traction we now see in the US market, that next year we see some real life deployments coming our way. Similar to what we've been building, I would say, in Austria with APT. It would not surprise me if we start seeing that also in the US, but you're closer to it. So,
you're 100% right. So the really cool thing about open source, and by relation, the Energy Web project, is that all of this work we've been doing in Europe with DINA, with ELIA, with 50 Hertz, with Austrian Power Grid, even with our partners in Pacific Asia, with the work we've been doing in Turkey, that infrastructure. So again, the Energy Web decentralized operating system, now we can bring it to the US because there is this order that is really saying, hey, make it possible for all these assets to participate. So it's really just a testament to the power of open source. Yeah. And like you said, Walter, so indeed, we're in conversation with almost every single one of the grid operators impacted by this FERC order. We're talking about not only how can the Energy Web community work with each of them individually, but also how can we maybe work with them together to jointly build something for all of the different areas that they're all affected in? Because it's different than Europe, right? Each of these utilities is going to be coming up with their own plan. But clearly those plans are going to have significant overlap on IT and software. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So more to come there. We're, again, in conversation with most of them, excited to see what comes out the other end. Related question, we got hit a lot, and even on Telegram, on Twitter, and you got to talk about the election. Yeah. And I think my spin is that I would actually put back there is that whether Trump had been elected, whether Biden was elected, which he has been, I just want to say, and Walter, I think you and I have had this chat a lot just drinking beers, contrary to what the news tells you, let's just be clear. Renewable energy knows no political boundary anymore at the base level because it is cheap. So solar, wind, hydro, all this stuff, we talk about virtual power plants and demand response. Those technologies taken together are cheaper than fossil fuel-based power. I find myself saying that all the time, and it's just maddening. It's like it should be a conservative talking point, right? And so from my perspective in the US, our mission at Energy Web would have been rocking and rolling regardless of who got elected. Biden administration will have some implications. We'll talk about it. But again, zooming out from the election, that's my thing I keep coming back to, is that everything we're working on, there's a business case behind it.
And also you see a lot of the more, let's say, traditional oil-based companies are also all moving into, let's say, the renewable energy field. So it's coming left, right, and center. And I would say globally, there's no way it cannot happen, particularly not with the FERC order. Well, I think the Biden administration, at least they've set a nice budget aside. But even without a budget, I agree, it's a business case in itself. So and if it wasn't for the financials, it's needed anyway for the climate. I'm not sure about. Well, I am sure about the US because you had a lot of wildfires, but also in Europe, this was the longest summer ever in the Netherlands. And in Spain, it's been very, very dry. So I think it's very well understood that we're at the point of no return. And it's more figuring out how to do it than whether or not we are going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Chance,
indeed.
yeah.
Zooming in on the Biden administration, I think there are some interesting things to speculate on. And there's a lot of other writing on this. Again, we're not policy experts here at Energy Web. We're all focused on building tech, but clearly we're following these things. Point one is about electric vehicles. So because Biden is going to be president, but the Senate may not be fully Democratic, hard to pass anything that looks and feels like the Green New Deal is what everybody's talking about. There might still be some large scale infrastructure spending. And we got a number of questions from the audience. What impact does that have on digital and the energy transition? Short answer is a lot. If there's a lot of federal funding that can be deployed to these regional grid operators, then they have more capital to put digital infrastructure on the grid, which is going to be a massive priority. Yeah. But to get a bit more precise, again, electric vehicles, the Biden administration can increase fuel efficiency standards. And I don't even know what the European equivalent is here, but basically they can, through the Environmental Protection Agency, increase requirements about how efficient cars need to be. Lo and behold, what's going to happen? That accelerates the rate at which automotives focus on electric vehicle manufacturing and deployment. So we could see more EVs on the road at a faster timeline, which is pretty big. The second thing, we just announced a member that joined the Energy Web community called Community Electricity. And some folks have been asking about this.
Los Angeles, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're a pretty interesting organization. They focus on helping disadvantaged communities. So these are typically communities that are in areas with higher levels of pollution. In some cases, these are households that are a lower middle income. So working on these communities to actually put them at the forefront of the energy transition by putting more of an equity lens on them. And so we're excited to work with Community Electricity. And if you look at the Biden administration, again, a significant amount of any capital that would be deployed to support climate or low carbon energy projects is going to be directed at those kinds of communities. So that's another, I think, interesting thing to look for coming out of the Biden administration, not just the dollar amounts for support in the transition, but where it's going. Yeah.
I think the other, looking from a European side to the big US, I think the other big good thing that comes out of this election is that it's all going to be a little bit more reasonable again. So US joining again some of the earlier agreements that the Trump administration stepped out. So I think it's again much more a global story than Europe and not the US. So I think that's also very good.
Indeed. Yep. Yeah, Maeve, what do you think? Can we get some of the US grid operators to directly collaborate with the Western European ones? I guess they already are, the chain behind you. But,
yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I also think that's the beauty about digital. It's and that's really unique, I think, about the energy sector. So there's, I don't know, 196 countries, 195 countries in the world, but they're not competing when it comes to electricity provision. Actually, at the border, they work together for the flexibility markets. But it's very much copy and paste. And we see it already in Europe. We now see it with FERC in the US. And there's really, open source and what we do with the decentralized stack, the trust layer. I think that is the architecture that we'll just see across all the countries. Yeah. Agreed.
Great. So maybe a question for you, Walter. Number of questions, just like the previous AMA. What's coming next on exchanges for the Energy Web token? Can we get some updates on what's going on with those processes?
Yeah, it's not a surprise. I see this question again. Whenever I look at our formal channel, I probably see it a couple of times an hour, I guess, or a day. So let me be very clear. It's very important for our members and also for us, the team at Energy Web, that we are also listed on the big tier 1 exchanges. So we're totally aligned on that. I see the comments in the channel when tier 1 is typically the summary question. And the when is, I'll answer that a little bit more later, but should we or should we not be on a tier 1? We are totally in agreement there. Yes, we should, and yes, we will, because our members are also asking for it. We're working with the largest corporates around the world, and of course, they want to be able to have not only they want to have custody and all kind of good services from large tier 1 exchanges, and a lot's happening there now too. In that, so for those who have followed it. If you see Kraken now got a banking license in, I think it's Wyoming. You see, I think a big bank in Singapore now get a license to run an exchange. So you see the whole financial world and exchanges coming together, particularly in centralized exchanges. So you see them more and more stepping into the enterprise market, very, very relevant for our members. On the other hand, you see much more decentralized exchanges becoming very professional, actually competing with the centralized exchanges. So I think it's a very good time for the industry. So yes, we are going to be listed on TOR exchanges, but then it comes about the timing, and of course everybody is impatient, and everybody has the right to be impatient. It's also true that we're not the only project or organization that wants to be listed. So there's a lot of backlogs currently, particularly at the tier 1 exchanges, So, but I can say that we're making steady progress. We're making very good progress. So it will come, but I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to pre-announce an announcement or whatever, but everybody on the webinar and on the channel can be very clear that when we know it's formal, we will announce it in our formal channels, and people will know. And that's probably as much as I can say about it. But it's very important for our members and for us too. So sit back and relax, and you'll see it coming.
Yeah, thanks, Walter. So I was just scrolling through the comments, and I think we are actually in a moment going to invite another EnergyWeb colleague to come on to answer a couple of other questions about DIDs in particular. But before we jump there, let's have a little conversation. There's a lot of questions about Polkadot and a lot of questions about Kusama and multi-chains and parachains. And if I do my best to summarize, it's basically recognizing it's a long view, right? 5 years, 10 years. What do we think the kind of landscape is going to look like with EnergyWeb chain as it is now, a multi-chain kind of future, and how is the token going to interact in that kind of an environment? And again, right, if I'm trying to summarize, it's not saying, what's coming in the next 6 months, but just trying to take a long view. What is this whole ecosystem going to look like?
Yeah. Well, I think it's we've said it from day one, even before we launched our own chain. We've always believed, and it's always been our vision, that it will be a multi-chain world. So we're dealing with the largest enterprise of the world. They have many facets. They have big financials. They have supply chains. They have chains around their own propositions. Then, if they are in the consumer market, they have to deal with all kind of consumer type chains. So we've always said the future of the energy web is the future where we are part of a much bigger ecosystem when it comes to decentralized technology ecosystems. And actually what you see now, Polkadot, of course, launched, a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, and it's now actually starting to happen. Of course, we've seen through the DeFi hype that Ethereum is not very scalable. The transaction costs are very, very high. And I think we said it last time, at that moment in time, our chain was 80,000 times cheaper or so per transaction than mainnet Ethereum. But that's a good thing, because it shows how successful decentralized architectures, in this case Ethereum, is, and how much it's needed. It's just not fit for purpose. And again, that demonstrates how early days it is. Ethereum has only been there for 5 years. It's nothing. So Polkadot has started now. We're very interested in that. We have good connections with the Parity team on many fronts, with Gavin Wood through our history, and also what we're talking about now through our ecosystem. So we're seriously following that, and indeed we're going to build a testnet on it for DNet, etc. So we will know next year how that works. Of course, then now there's Ethereum 2.0, which is very interesting. I'm very curious how it will work out with the staking. It's not going very fast, but again, it shows a great tech potentially, but do the people actually follow? Do they want to stake it for 2 years? It's a big amount, 32 ETH, and it's all experimenting. So I would say 2-3 years from now, we actually know what works from a technology perspective, and there will be many, many more things coming. Just see what's happening in the enterprises. So we'll be experimenting with all these technologies. We've actually sponsored a PhD at a university that's specifically going to do fundamental research on interoperability. And what we will always make sure is, of course, that, like you said before, Jesse, any asset should be able to connect to any market and participate. And that's why our ecosystem and our decentralized tech stack will be part of the multi-chain environment too. So the other chains, if they want to talk or connect to an energy asset digitally, they will come to us. And that's where we will be. And that's where our energy web token will play a very important role. And we just need to figure out how we're going to connect to these environments. But I think next to Polkadot, next to Ethereum 2.0, there will be other ecosystems too that will pop up, and we will also be connecting to those. But when it comes to, hey, there's an energy asset that I want to pull into a nice application that I've running on Polkadot, whatever that nice application is, then they need to come to our decentralized operating system. And that's where our token plays a role. So
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Very thorough, Walter. You're a master at thinking about these future architectures. My only addition would be exactly what you hit on the end there. For those kind of looking at the unique value proposition of Energy Web, if you don't talk about energy, you talk about crypto, look at that utility layer. On the last AMA, you and I were talking about this concept of decentralized service level agreements. Basically, how can you give corporates and enterprises confidence that things like identity management, key management, messaging, data storage, a lot of these back-end services, how can you provide really high uptimes at low cost for those kinds of services? That's what this utility layer is focused on. So I don't pretend to be smart enough to say, yeah, it's going to be a relay chain and we're going to be a parachain. We're going to integrate with Polkadot. Like Walter was saying, my opinion is it's too early to tell exactly what the architecture is going to be. What I'm feeling a bit more confident on in terms of the role of our stack in the future, look at that utility layer. These are services that are going to be required anywhere in the world for any kind of energy application. They all use the Energy Web token. There's a really good business logic and reason behind that design. So that's where I'm focused. And that's where I think we're going to see some pretty interesting clarity in the next year. Yeah.
Totally. And that's a value, so that, you know, if an energy asset has an identity in our utility layer on in our ecosystem, that anybody can trust it. So if I'm saying I'm a car, I am a car, no doubt. It's a really, really, really interesting time we're in now, because and we will be experimenting with all these new technologies to really make sure that we that we follow where the market is going. But we will always make sure that when it comes to energy, being energy specific, building an ecosystem that assets can be trusted and participates in market, that's us. That will always be us. And that's where our token plays the role.
Yeah, excellent. One other question that came in, and actually I'm going to invite one of our colleagues to come in. Let's see here. To speak a bit more on this. So on about identity in particular, because we're getting some questions. Basically just a question about features. How one way to build and grow larger ecosystems, this is coming from YouTube, is to have a feature-rich kind of stack for developers to interact with. Yes, and to go double down on that, I think we just had my colleague Ian join us here. Hey Ian, how's it going?
Yep. Hey, good. Hi guys.
Hey Ian.
Yeah. So Ian is one of our distributed energy resource integration gurus. He's been in the background making a lot of these projects and everything happen. And most recently, Ian has been heads down on something that we are calling Switchboard, which one way to think about that is a pretty powerful developer tool that enables organizations to more easily use EW DOS. So Ian, just to put you on the spot, would you be willing to take a few minutes to kind of talk us through why are we talking about decentralized identifiers all the time? What is this switchboard thing? It'd be great to just give the community a little sampling.
Yeah, happy to. So one way to do this, pardon me, I presented like 8 slides to the membership a few weeks ago. I promise it's not death by PowerPoint. It's some screenshots and that kind of stuff, but that might be a way to.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Show it. Okay, cool. Let me spin this up. All right. So are we coming through?
I'll check. Go ahead and start walking through. I'll check it on the live stream because there's a 20-second delay. But
All right,
yeah,
excellent.
go for it.
Yeah, so kind of the context here is we think DIDs and self-sovereign identity are key technologies to everything that we're trying to do here in the energy sector. They underpin a lot of the use cases themselves. So each of these use cases can be made better if we leverage DIDs. And they also allow, because of the network effects, so if you create a DID and you register your battery storage system or whatever it might be, that can then be trusted for other applications as well. So we have this network effect, or this kind of economy of scope, you might think of it, by getting all of these persons and assets their own DIDs. So that's great, but they're not adopted yet. So how do we actually get there? We could, of course, sit back and just hope that everybody does this on their own. And that, of course, isn't our approach. We want to make this easy for folks and also do it in a decentralized way. So that solution doesn't exist today. Let's build something as Energy Web that everyone can use, both within our community and even beyond. You know, the idea here is anytime somebody wants to build an app, they need to figure out identity and access management. They've got a few problems that are common no matter what they're trying to do about users, their roles, how do users create identities, how do we map an identity to a role, and then how do we authenticate? So when somebody wants to actually sign into the app and use it, how do we make sure they are who they claim to be, and that kind of thing. And again, we want to do this really decentralized. We want to make it easy to use so that you know, anyone who's used the internet before can figure this out and do this. And we want to incorporate some of the other tech that we've been building. So our ENS, Ethereum name service, or Energy Web name service, that we've released, the user and asset registry work we're doing, key management work we're doing, all of this can be sort of integrated into one place. So that's sort of the idea behind this. And what you see here is an actual screenshot. It's going to be a little bit more involved in this, of course, but give you a flavor of sort of the look and feel. And you know, so what we want to do is anyone who has a wallet, they can integrate either, you could use a MetaMask browser extension, or you can use Wallet Connect to pull in a huge variety of wallets and use those to create a DID or manage a DID associated with that key pair. So really broad compatibility. We want a really simple user interface, so you can easily create a DID, you can easily manage that DID. Finally, we want to make this both standalone, so anyone can come to a deployment of this at our website and create a DID, manage DID, look for apps, that kind of thing. But we also want to make this so that anybody who's developing an app out there who just wants to use this as a component, so they don't want to create the identity and access management functionality from scratch. You know, ours is open source, just use it, plug it into what you're doing, and you don't have to figure that out. You can jump right into the more interesting bits of functionality for your app and deploy faster. So that's sort of how we kind of very broadly envision using it. So a little bit more in the weeds here. If you are developing an app or the owner of an app, you can define the namespace within the Energy Web ENS space, define the roles in your app, define the claims. So we're using, of course, with DID and self-sovereign identity, it's a system of verified claims. But when you're setting that up to do this in a decentralized way, you need the owner of that app to specify, okay, if you want to claim that you're an installer of solar PV systems or something, how do you as a DID prove that you are actually an installer? What claims do you need from what authorities in order to establish that? So you set up this whole sort of governance role structure within the app using Switchboard. And then, of course, user authentication and enrollment. So this is, we're being very specific and intentional about the language here. When you register a DID using a wallet, that is your DID for life. You use it across whatever apps you ever use. Enrollment is taking that DID and saying, this DID is taking on some specific role within a specific app. So that's the difference between registration and enrollment here. And of course, again, want to make this really user-friendly, so easy to accomplish all of this stuff. Your average user doesn't want to sit in front of a command line and try to figure this out. It needs to be really familiar if they've used the internet before. So again, quick screenshots. This would be, you can see role governance. So this is somebody who is setting up an app and specifying the different roles within that application, and then setting what verified claims are required in order to take on that role, enroll in that role for a DID. And on the flip side, the user, Ted Tyler here in our example, can look at what apps they have and what are the enrollments in the different apps. So you can kind of keep track of all of the different apps within the ecosystem that you're actually using. So kind of a couple, again, you want to double click on this because I think this is pretty important. We're making it so that people can use Switchboard in a couple different ways. The first is just anybody in the world could use it at our website. So it's defining the namespace and roles if you're building an app yourself, requesting and issuing claims. So if you're wanting to enroll or you're an authority specified in an app, you can use Switchboard to do those things. If you have received a claim for you or your devices and you want to add it to that DID document, you can use Switchboard for that. And just hinted at it, but you can manage your assets. So if you've got battery storage systems, PV systems, EVs, smart thermostats, whatever it is, you can give each of those DIDs and then manage those DIDs all from the Switchboard that we would be hosting. And then again, the other way to use it is just to use that component within an app that you as a developer are building. So use it for authenticating users, allowing users to enroll in your application. And the key here is we don't want, when you're at Amazon or any e-commerce site, if you want to pay with PayPal, you don't want to have to go back to the PayPal website and log in and use that somehow. You just want it all to be within the website where you're shopping. So it's just a little component there, boom, it's done. It's really clean and simple. So we will set it up the same way so that when people build apps, they can, their users don't need to leave their app, but all of this functionality can be taken care of right there and they don't have to build it from scratch. So that's just real fast, but gives you a taste of what we're working on right now.
Great, thanks, Ian. And yeah, if you click out, we'll get the video back for everybody. Maybe a couple of questions just after having walked through that. One that comes to mind for me first is more of a comment. So Walter and I on the last time, we were talking about staking and kind of plans for staking. So just a comment for the audience here. Switchboard is going to be the kind of high-level path by which different organizations can participate in the staking mechanisms that are being developed here. Whether you're an organization that's actually going to provide a utility layer service, or you're somebody who wants to, as we've talked about at a very high level, effectively stake tokens against a service provider. Again, without going into a ton of detail right now, Switchboard is going to be the software that kind of guides that entire process. So we thought it was a really good idea to have Ian come on and start speaking about it a little bit on the staking piece.
Yeah. And the other aspect I like to flag is that it also gives you, so a lot of functionality that's been built in Switchboard actually allows developers to develop applications much faster than they would normally have to do. So they don't have to take care of a lot of detailed work. They can just deploy it using the Switchboard basically toolkit or whatever is the right name for it. So again, it would encourage, and I would encourage a lot of DApp builders to actually start playing around with it when we launch it, because it's a really cool piece of tech and it simplifies it a lot. Yeah. And again, when it comes to multi-chain, this is then multi-wallet. We had just had a discussion on multi-chain and how it all connect. Same with wallet. People will take the wallet they prefer as long as it uses the Wallet Connect infrastructure or standard, that it will work. So there's no need to go to a certain wallet. You just use what you use for, or what nice stuff will come, and it works, which is also brilliant.
We got a question on differentiation on the YouTube comments. So what's one of the big differentiators between the Energy Web stack and some other, not energy stacks, but just more generally the kind of crypto stacks that are out there? Ian, just watching you talk through Switchboard really triggered for me. Can you speak a little bit about how that architecture supports, I want to say the word private or just deeply permissioned applications on public infrastructure? I think that nuance is really, Walter and I try and articulate it, but in your own words, can you speak a little bit about how what you just talked through with DIDs and claims enables these really private solutions on top of public infrastructure?
Yeah. So, when we think about our stack, if anybody has seen the diagram that we have on our website and that kind of stuff, we have the chain at the bottom and the what we call the trust layer at the bottom. And what we're really talking about is anchoring all of these DIDs to that. But that doesn't mean that all of your information is on the blockchain, far from it. So really what is on that chain, what that anchor means is you own that key pair, and then at that address, it will link to what is called a DID document. And this is where you store any of your more private information. And this is encrypted, and it is completely up to you when you share it, with whom you share it. You can be really precise about, your ability to prove, say, I have no outstanding balance on my electric bill without having to reveal how much your electric bill has been, how much energy you used, or something like that, just as an example. So it allows you as the user to have total control over your data. You own it. You control who you share it with and when and exactly what you want to share. It puts you in the center in that way. So then we can ensure privacy because you're the one who owns your data, controls it, and only reveals it when you want to. But we then also make it very easy for you to share it when you want to. And a lot of that data itself is these verified claims, so you can prove things about yourself to enroll in apps or do things.
Got it.
It's a very good explanation. And just to stress, so basically what we're building, and again, so we're building this as open source toolkit with our members, for our members. So this will come to market in these markets. But we're actually also leapfrogging the traditional way of having to log in and exposing all your data to whoever provides your energy. And you can actually, like Ian is saying, be in control of your own data and only expose what it is you want to expose, which is so important given where we are with the whole journey of consumers and smaller and larger enterprises buying energy assets and wanted to stay in charge of what they do with it. Are we still live, Jesse? I see. Oh yeah, we're still live. Yeah,
we are.
It was on my side. It was in the Netherlands. So I think so. It's really cool to be able to not just build this with our members, but also as a sector to really be on the forefront of that. Because in Europe we have GDPR, the data protection laws, and they're very tough. But actually, with this architecture, it's built in. You're in control as a consumer, which is how it should be. Yeah,
excellent. So I think there's one last question, and Ian, now that you're here, I'm going to put you on the spot again. So we got a couple questions about Zero, and specifically just trying to talk through the user story, specifically of a potential Bitcoin miner. So Walter, I know as an early BTC adopter, I'll talk to you a little bit about that, or relatively early, I don't know. Let's talk about that for a minute. So basically the question is, if I'm a Bitcoin miner, how do I make use of Zero? That's where the question's coming from. And so I know the three of us have talked about a couple of different ways that a Bitcoin miner could interact with Zero. maybe I'll start with one example, and the two of you, please feel free to correct me because you're looking at Zero from different perspectives. So basically, a Bitcoin miner could be, producing Bitcoins. Yeah. But on the buy side, so if we go to an exchange, for an example, an exchange could now offer a service, and that service could say, click here to top up your purchase order of a Bitcoin with a few more Satoshis to add on a certificate. That certificate would basically be a green attribute that you're pairing with the energy that was used to produce that Bitcoin on the exchange. So one way, and in the background, right, Zero would be facilitating that connection between the Bitcoin that's mined by a specific mining pool and a certificate coming from a specific renewable energy facility. So from a user perspective, it would happen on the exchange. From an IT perspective, there's a connection using the Zero architecture behind the scenes. So that's one. I don't know if you guys have other ways to talk through how Zero could be leveraged to kind of decarbonize cryptocurrencies.
Yeah,
Ian goes first. Yeah,
sure. Thanks, Walter. For me, it's about so much of the criticism around blockchain networks is energy inefficiency, right? And of course, for a lot of networks, this is by design, and there's a reason for it. But the criticism still stands. And if we want to make this make these networks sustainable, at least from an energy perspective, then how do we do it? That's what Zero is really about, is we can initially somewhat manually, but over time, really automate this process of saying, if you are transacting over a blockchain network and you want to ensure that renewable energy is being used to power that transaction, you can acquire the certificate, the backup to prove that, along with whatever else you're doing. And we can make that inexpensive. We can make it whatever market or wherever in the world you want to focus on. We could break it down by technology. We could do a whole host of different things, but basically allow you to, for just a relatively small amount of additional cost, say, you know what, I'm doing all of this renewably powered, either as a transactor or as a mining pool or whoever it is that actually cares about this.
Totally. And just so the Bitcoin architecture is, of course, is a little bit different than what we're used to in our own world. And they actually work with unspent transaction output, so the really identifiable transactions. So you could relatively simply earmark, let's say, the block reward of a miner that goes to a specific output, saying this output was green. So it's extremely traceable. And I actually think that when even more larger enterprises decide to go into digital currencies and crypto, that it would not surprise me that it actually becomes a requirement from them that they only want to buy green Bitcoins and not black. So I think it will, it's a matter of time again, as far as I'm concerned.
So for example, I think that's a really good point, Walter, that we should emphasize for the audience. So basically, when we hear about these institutional investors or enterprises taking long cryptocurrency positions,
yes,
they're going to have to show, because of corporate social responsibility goals and objectives around sustainability, that those positions are clean.
Exactly right. Yep.
Which, I mean, just yesterday, I saw an article that a number of Chinese mining pools are moving because of seasonal variations in hydroelectricity, are moving to very dirty areas of the grid to produce those Bitcoins.
Yeah, you actually now see it's true. The rain season is stopped, so now you see more black Bitcoins and dirty Bitcoins being produced. But at the same time, actually, you see Texas ramping up with a lot of solar. So I think, it's also for Bitcoin. It's a really good use case to go to green. But I think, with Zero, we can actually front run that. Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Great. Well, thanks for the questions, everybody. I think that is all the time we have. So we're going to wrap it up now. Ian, thanks for joining, talking us through Switchboard. We're excited to be announcing that in the near future. Walter, thanks for joining from the Netherlands.
Sure.
And everybody, we'll be in touch for the next AMA. Thanks a lot.